DJ Opportunity. Title: DJ Opportunity. Chapter 1. The Fading Laughs. Kenny, at 30 years old, had a face that promised a laugh. Not a chiseled, movie star kind of face, but one creased with the potential for mirth, quick to crinkle around the eyes when a punchline landed. For years, he'd poured his soul into stand-up comedy, meticulously crafting jokes in the quiet hours, testing them on unsuspecting friends, and enduring the brutal honesty of open mic nights. He loved the crackle of anticipation, the collective inhale of an audience, the glorious eruption of shared laughter. It was his purpose, his chosen path. Then, the big break. Or what he thought was the big break. His tireless efforts paid off when a local promoter, a slick-haired man named Peter, offered him a regular spot at a small, intimate club in the city. The lights felt hotter, the mic heavier, the silence before a set more profound. For a while, it was magic. People laughed. They clapped. They told him he was going places. Kenny felt like he was flying. But flight, he would soon learn, could be a fleeting thing. Over the next few weeks, a subtle shift began. The room, once packed, started to thin out. The laughter, once robust and spontaneous, became polite, then scattered, then barely there at all. Kenny started to notice the blank stares, the people checking their phones, the awkward coughs that punctuated his carefully timed pauses. He tried new material, old material, anything to rekindle the spark, but it was like trying to light damp kindling. The fire just wouldn't catch. One Tuesday, after a particularly sparse and silent set, Peter called him into his office. The air was thick with the smell of stale coffee and unspoken disappointment. "Kenny," Peter began, his voice devoid of its usual promotional cheer, "we need to talk about your numbers." He gestured vaguely at a spreadsheet on his computer screen. "They're not good. People aren't laughing, Kenny. Most nights, the seats are half empty. Hell, some nights they're practically empty." Kenny's stomach clenched. He knew it in his bones, but hearing it articulated, cold and clinical, was a punch to the gut. "I'm trying new things, Peter. It takes time to build an audience." "Time. We don't have time, Kenny. We have bills to pay. And right now, you're not bringing in enough to cover the lights, let alone my cut." Peter leaned forward, his gaze hardening. "Truth is, your jokes aren't landing. They just aren't funny enough anymore." The words hung in the air, echoing the doubt that had been gnawing at Kenny for weeks. His jokes weren't funny enough. The very foundation of his identity, crumbling. The end of the month arrived, bringing with it the expectation of payment. Despite the dwindling crowds, a contract was a contract. Kenny, trying to maintain a semblance of professional dignity, approached Peter. "Peter, about my pay for this month's sets." Peter spun around, his face pinched with irritation. "Pay? What pay, Kenny? You didn't earn any money for me, so you're not getting any from me. People stopped coming to see your act. And frankly, I've seen better laughs at a funeral." He slammed his fist on the desk, his voice rising to a shout. "You're fired, Kenny. Get out." The words hit Kenny like a physical blow. Fired. His comedic dream, extinguished. He stumbled out of the office, the humiliation burning in his cheeks. The club, once a stage for his aspirations, now felt like a tomb for his pride. When he got home, the silence of his small apartment was deafening. He sank onto his worn sofa, the weight of his failure pressing down on him. Peter was right. The truth, ugly as it was, stared back at him from the mirror of his memory. Those blank faces, the polite coughs, the empty seats. His jokes weren't good enough. The rent was due, the utilities were piling up, and now, with no income, the financial stress was a suffocating blanket. He ran a hand through his hair, despair washing over him. But as the darkness deepened, a faint spark flickered. A memory of another passion, long dormant. Before the open mics, before the tireless joke writing, there had been something else. A rhythm, a beat, a different kind of performance. He had another talent. He was a DJ. Chapter 2. A New Beat. The transition was jarring, like switching from a microphone to turntables, from spoken word to instrumental landscapes. The first few weeks were a clumsy mess of scratches and offbeat mixes. It was a humbling reset, but Kenny was desperate. The memory of Peter's shouted words, the empty club, the towering stack of bills, it all fueled his determination. He locked himself in his apartment, transforming his living room into a makeshift studio. He bought second-hand equipment, spent hours watching tutorials online, and immersed himself in the world of beats and breaks. His fingers, once accustomed to gripping a mic, now learned the delicate art of nudging records, fader control, and beat matching. He learned the language of BPMs and EQs, of drops and builds. The hours blurred into days, then weeks, then months. He practiced endlessly, finding solace and purpose in the rhythmic pulse of the music. He experimented with genres, trying to find his unique voice, a sound that resonated with him. And then, he found it. The moment of discovery was exhilarating. He layered a gritty hip-hop a cappella over a thumping drum and bass beat, and something clicked. The raw energy of the drum and bass provided the perfect foundation for the lyrical flow and swagger of hip-hop. It was unexpected, a fusion that created an electrifying synergy. His mixes started to flow with a newfound fluidity, the transition seamless, the energy infectious. He wasn't just playing music, he was weaving a sonic tapestry that told a story. His confidence grew with each perfected mix. He knew this was it. This was his true talent, not the forced laughs, but the undeniable pull of a good beat. One afternoon, scrolling through local music forums, he saw a name pop up repeatedly, Nitu. Age 28, a promoter known for organizing vibrant, impromptu street parties across the city. His events were legendary for their raw energy and ability to draw huge crowds. Kenny knew this was his shot. He tracked down Nitu, finding him at a small cafe, already surrounded by a buzzing entourage. Kenny approached him, his heart hammering against his ribs, recalling the desperate pleas he'd made to Peter for more stage time. Nitu, Kenny began, his voice a little shaky but firm. My name's Kenny. I'm a DJ, and I've been following your street parties. They're incredible. Nitu, a man with sharp eyes and an even sharper fashion sense, looked him over, unimpressed. And I'm looking for an opportunity, Kenny said, taking a deep breath. I've been working on a new sound, mixing drum and bass with hip-hop. I think it would blow your crowd away. Just one chance, Nitu. That's all I ask. No pay needed up front, just let me show you what I can do. He practically begged, the memory of his comedy failure a fresh wound. Nitu, always on the lookout for fresh talent, and likely intrigued by the no upfront pay offer, considered him for a moment. All right, Kenny Flex, he said, giving Kenny a nickname on the spot. I've got a party next Saturday, down on Elm Street. Be there. Don't be late. And don't waste my time. Kenny's heart soared. He had his chance. A new stage, a different kind of mic, a second shot at finding his place. Chapter 3. The Unheard Mix. The air on Elm Street next Saturday vibrated with a palpable energy. Nitu's street party was in full swing, a canvas of vibrant graffiti, dancing bodies, and pulsing music. Kenny arrived with his turntables, mixer, and towering speakers, the equipment feeling heavier with the weight of his expectations. He found Nitu and was directed to an empty spot at the edge of the makeshift stage. Before him, holding court, was William, a DJ of 25 with an effortless cool. William was tearing it up, dropping classic hip-hop beats interwoven with slick R&B vocals, his transitions smooth, his energy infectious. The crowd was loving it, a sea of bobbing heads and swaying bodies, completely lost in the rhythm. William had them in the palm of his hand, every person dancing, laughing, and enjoying themselves. Kenny watched, a knot forming in his stomach. William was good. Really good. This was tough competition. Eventually, William brought his set to a crescendo and faded out to a roar of applause. He nodded to the crowd, a satisfied smirk on his face, then packed down his gear. Nitu approached him, a brisk nod. Good set, William. See you around. William paused. About the pay, Nitu. Nitu waved a dismissive hand. Pay. This was a showcase, man. Exposure. You think I get rich throwing these parties? Get out of here. Next time, maybe. William's face fell, but he merely shrugged, gathered his things, and walked away, a silent testament to the cutthroat world of street promotion. Kenny, witnessing this, felt a fresh wave of dread. All right, Kenny Flex. Nitu called, clapping his hands. Your turn. Let's see what you got. Kenny took his place, a mix of nerves and adrenaline coursing through him. He plugged in his equipment, adjusted the headphones, and stared out at the expectant crowd. This was it. His carefully crafted drum and bass and hip-hop fusion, ready to unleash. But then, a flicker of doubt. He'd practiced that mix for months, but was it too niche? Would these street party goers, still buzzing from William's mainstream appeal, appreciate it? A sudden, paralyzing fear of rejection, a ghost of Peter's words, whispered in his ear. Your jokes aren't good enough. In a moment of panic, a disastrous, last-minute decision seized him. He wouldn't play his planned set. He'd try something safer, something he thought might appeal to a broader audience, something he'd dabbled in but never perfected. He dropped the first track, a funky house beat. Then he brought in elements of garage music, trying to blend the two. It was a stark departure from William's set, and even further from the drum and bass, hip-hop fusion he'd promised Nitu. The crowd's reaction was immediate and visceral. The dancing abruptly stopped. Heads turned, confusion etched on faces. The vibrant energy drained from the street like air from a punctured tire. People started exchanging angry glances, some muttering, "What is this?" Others started drifting away, their enjoyment replaced by palpable irritation. The funky house and garage, instead of igniting a new vibe, simply extinguished the old one. Nitu, his face a mask of fury, stormed onto the makeshift stage. Kenny, what the hell is this? He roared, grabbing the mic. I told you to entertain my crowd, not put 'em to sleep. Get off my stage, you idiot. You're fired. He yanked the power cord, plunging Kenny's speakers into silence. The humiliation was absolute, even worse than Peter's club. Kenny disconnected his turntables, his hands shaking, the last vestiges of his confidence evaporating into the angry street. As he packed his equipment, the sting of failure raw, he saw Nitu approaching, a sneer on his face. So, about my pay, Nitu? Kenny asked, the words feeling hollow. Nitu let out a harsh laugh. Pay for that garbage. You ruined my party. You earned nothing, Kenny. Get lost. Kenny didn't argue. His head down, he began to push his heavy speakers through the dispersing crowd. He just wanted to disappear. As he navigated the edge of the party, a voice called out to him. Hey, man. It was William, who had been lingering nearby. William, who had just been denied his own pay, but who now looked at Kenny with something akin to sympathy. Don't worry about Nitu, man, William said, his voice quiet. He's like that. Happens to everyone eventually. He clapped a hand on Kenny's shoulder. What you were playing, it wasn't bad. Just not the right crowd, maybe. Kenny looked at William, his eyes filled with a fresh, unexpected sense of camaraderie. William hadn't gloated, hadn't dismissed him. He had offered an olive branch. Without a word, Kenny nodded, and with William by his side, he pushed his equipment away from the dying embers of Nitu's street party, leaving the noise and the disappointment behind. Chapter 4. The resounding success. They walked only a block, the heavy speakers thudding rhythmically with each step, the air still thick with the distant, fading sounds of Nitu's party. They turned onto a quieter street, lined with small shops and apartment buildings, far enough to be distinct, but close enough to catch anyone drifting away from the main event. Kenny stopped, the last echoes of Nitu's "fired" ringing in his ears. He looked at William, then at his equipment, then at the empty pavement. One last opportunity, he thought. This was it. If this failed, he was done. No more dreams, no more attempts. Back to square one, with even more bills and a heavier heart. You got anything else? William asked, sensing Kenny's hesitation. Kenny took a deep breath. Yeah, he said, his voice regaining a spark of its former determination. I got something. But it's different. He pulled out his turntables, connected them to the mixer and the speakers. This time, there was no hesitation, no second thoughts. He was going to play his music. The music he had poured months of his life into. The drum and bass with hip-hop. He dropped the first beat. A deep, resonant kick drum, followed by a frenetic, syncopated drum line. Then, he overlaid a classic hip-hop sample, a familiar hook that instantly grabbed attention. The synergy was undeniable, the energy immediate. It wasn't just music. It was an invitation to move. Initially, a few curious passersby stopped. A couple, walking hand in hand, paused, their heads starting to bob. A group of teenagers, bored with the fading energy of Nitu's party, drifted over, their expressions changing from apathy to intrigued surprise. Kenny closed his eyes for a moment, letting the music flow through him, feeling the rhythm in his veins. He worked the crossfader, seamlessly blending tracks, adding intricate scratches, building the energy. He watched as more people gathered, drawn by the raw, pulsating beat. Soon, a small crowd had formed, people tapping their feet, then swaying, then outright dancing. William, seeing the magic unfold, grinned. He had his own small portable speaker and started playing some complementary tracks on a lower volume, creating an even richer soundscape. He encouraged the crowd, cheering Kenny on, becoming Kenny's impromptu hype man. The street erupted. People who had been angry at Nitu's party, people who had been simply walking by, were now fully immersed. The unique fusion of drum and bass and hip-hop was fresh, exciting, and utterly infectious. It was a sound they hadn't heard before, an unexpected delight. The crowd grew exponentially, spilling onto the sidewalk, turning the quiet street into an impromptu dance floor. Laughter, genuine and unrestrained, filled the air. Kenny and William, two DJs who had been fired and dismissed, found themselves at the center of an explosion of joy. Every weekend, they returned to their new spot, their reputation growing by word of mouth. Nitu's street parties, meanwhile, became noticeably emptier, their crowds migrating to the vibrant new scene Kenny and William had created. Within months, Kenny and William were drawing thousands of people, the names synonymous with the best street parties in the city. They started collecting donations in a bucket, initially just enough for new equipment, but soon, it was overflowing. They were making thousands of pounds, their unexpected partnership proving to be a golden combination. One evening, after a particularly wild and successful set, a well-dressed young man approached them. His name was Rowan, age 28, a known tech entrepreneur and a wealthy young man who had been a regular at their parties for weeks. What you two are doing, Rowan said, his eyes gleaming with admiration, it's more than just music. It's community. It's pure, unadulterated joy. And it's exactly what this city needs. He pulled out a checkbook. I want to help you take this to the next level. Consider this an investment in the future of street culture. He handed Kenny a check. Kenny looked down, his eyes widening. £500,000. For them. For their music. Kenny looked at William, then back at the check, then at the cheering crowd around them. The once struggling comedian, fired for not being funny, now stood on a street corner, bathed in the glow of success, a fortune in his hand. He paid off all his bills, bought new, top-of-the-line equipment, and together with William, they began planning even bigger events, transforming city spaces into stages for the unique sound. Kenny finally knew. This wasn't just a talent. It was his destiny. He had found his opportunity. Not in the spotlight of a comedy club, but in the pulsating heart of the streets, where the rhythm of his soul finally found its true beat. The end. Story by Kayode E.